Are you guys good to go? So first off, thank you all for being here. We are streaming online and taking questions online, so we want to make sure our technical crew has everything squared away, so it looks like they're good to go. All right, so to begin, I always like to frame up why we're here. And the referendum process, if you're not familiar, in Delaware, when we are in need of additional revenue, we must go out for a referendum. So that's why we are here. We get a lot of questions over the last couple months as we've shared this information. When was the last time you were out? We feel like you were just out to a referendum recently. 2017 was the last current expense referendum, and that's the referendum we are discussing here this evening. Not to be confused with a capital expense referendum, which we did embark on in 2020. That capital expense referendum was to build the new school in the Georgetown-Millsboro area, the new Sussex Central High School. We also get questions, how's that project going? Are you needing to spend your money on to supplement that project? We do not. We are in good shape currently with the Sussex Central project, and it's on pace to move forward. So I kind of like to share that and give that information right off the bat. So again, good evening, Jay Owens, Superintendent, and I'm joined this evening by Tammy Smith, our Director of Finance, and some additional members of our team. So if you have specific questions, which we're going to take your questions here at the end, and we're also going to keep an eye on our online questions as well, so we will respond to those, but we'll also, if we do not answer your questions here that are coming in online, we'll also read those aloud too, so we make sure we answer all those questions. Okay, so what is this ask? This referendum is one question, but it's two parts. It is increased operating cost and recruitment and retention of staff. And I talked about the last time we went out to a referendum was 2017. And that's important to note because typically in Delaware, certainly Indian River School District, districts need to go out every 3 to 5 years when their reserves are depleted. And that 8-year mark is in large part because fiscal stewardship, but also after COVID, we received some federal funding. We were able to extend past that 5-year mark. Typically, we're around a 6-year district into that 8-year mark. So we're happy with that. However, the time has come now when we must go back to you, the public, for consideration of additional revenue. So this slide's important. We are not unique to what you're seeing in your own homes. Things are escalating, going up over the last several years. On average, the last 3 years, our expenses have gone up 7.4%, while our revenue generation has only increased 3.5%. So as you can see, that gap is wide, and that will continue to grow over the course of the next year or so until we address it through the referendum process. I talked about the utilities, obviously. These are just a few bullets of what impacts us the most across the district. The other thing is we want to make sure we have good, solid teachers, and we do that through a competitive salary package. So this has been negotiated. However, it's contingent upon this referendum. So right now, our salaries are consistent with the county. We're about mid to some areas the top, depending on where you are, if you're a veteran teacher or a new teacher. But we are competitive currently. However, we want to be able to maintain that, to keep good teachers in front of students, to make sure our classes are staffed accordingly. As you know, there is a national teacher shortage. And luckily in Indian River School District, through a lot of hard work and creating an environment that we feel is good to work within, we've been able to staff nearly 100% of our teaching positions over the last couple years. When I talk to some of my colleagues up and down the state, that is not always the case. In fact, we're a bit of an anomaly of being able to do that, and we want to be able to continue to staff our classrooms. If you have to put a substitute in front of a math class or a foreign language or a specialty area, you name it, or even a third grade classroom that you're going to have a teacher, a substitute for a considerable period of time, you know, we aren't getting the same level of, we love our substitutes, but we're not getting the same level of support if we're able to staff that classroom with a highly qualified teacher. All right, I talked about the first bullet there. We have looked at reductions already. We've looked first at the district office. We've consolidated, we've made some cuts, but we're also looking within our schools to see where can we be as efficient as possible, even leading up to the referendum. So that process continues. Daily, we're analyzing that, both scales, salary scales, before after school activities, et cetera. Those things are continued to be looked at. So we're hopeful that this referendum does not put us in a position where we have to look deeper than we really want to. All right, this is just a few bullets of what we've done. I've talked about a few of these. I will highlight some. You'll see up here an ESCO project. That's an energy savings initiative that the district entered into several years back, and they look at things like our lighting systems, are our light bulbs efficient, our HVAC systems, our cooling towers, our monitoring system behind the scenes of where our temperatures are, what's not working as properly as possible to ensure that we are as efficient as we can be. And through that, we save money. We also can generate rebates, et cetera. So that's one of the big initiatives. And you can see here some other use of federal E-rate funding. That's an initiative that is available to us that helps us get the best cost for technology throughout the district, and we utilize that as much as possible. So I won't read these all to you, but just a few of the things that we're currently doing to try to save as much as possible. All right, I want to brag a little bit. We aren't always aware of everything that's going on well in our schools, but we consistently have really amazing teachers that receive state and national awards. We've received 12 blue ribbons in the last 22 years, I believe. And those are national awards that are very, very difficult to achieve. Selbyville Middle School was one of our recent. Lord Baltimore was our most recent. But those things don't happen without having a really solid school and educational system that supports those schools. So very, very proud of that. Some of our teachers here, you can see some of the awards they've received up and down the district. And I'll highlight a second page here too. If you aren't aware, we are geographically the largest school district in Delaware. So we stretch down here in Dagsboro, but we go all the way to Selbyville, over to Fenwick, Bethany, over to Gumboro, up through Millsboro and Georgetown. So 15 schools, a special school in Howard TNS, which serves our students with disabilities. So a large footprint here that we are impacting here across the community. And as I said before, our schools aren't great without great staff, and that we want to be able to continue to staff our schools with really amazing people. I've got 3 kids in our school district, and I know really some of the highlights of their day is not necessarily what's happening in that classroom, but what's happening outside of their classroom, before school, after school, weekends. I'm talking about things like our athletics, our clubs, robotics, our arts, our band. You've likely, if you're in our community, you've probably been to some of our events. They're amazing, and they are because of the great people that we have. We want to continue that level of service, both in the classroom with solid teachers, with instruction, but also outside with offering all of these things that make well-rounded students and make our school system great. All right, I wanted to highlight this, but before I get to this slide, we could easily have a slide on students that are leaving us going into trade schools, going into the military, immediately into the workforce. We have a large population of students that are not college bound that we want to be able to prepare for life after high school. And we do that through course offerings here. We have career tech pathways, if you aren't aware, at both of our high schools. So the most recent addition to our pathways is culinary. Obviously, we're in an area that has a lot of tourism, so the culinary makes a lot of sense. That's been added. It is a very popular pathway here. Along with that, we have agricultural pathway, a large FFA at both schools. We have a teacher academy where students can learn to be teachers. Move on to that. We have a nursing pathway. We have structures for building, business, finance, technology. So we want to make sure we are offering at our high schools experiences and pathways that will help prepare students outside of school. Now on to this. I share this slide because it's important to note Our students here at Indian River, $8.8 million in scholarships just last year, and that's fairly consistent year after year, that level of scholarship. Sussex Central, $5.68 million last year. And we listed a few of the universities, not all of them, but some pretty amazing universities. And I want to share that because that doesn't happen. You don't generate that scholarship. You don't get into universities without having a really solid academic foundation. So we hope that we are providing the resource to allow students to go right into the workforce, military, police, nursing, whatever, and or go to a multi-year institution as well. We'll skip this slide and go to our next one. This same graphic, but this I think provides a little bit of a better picture. So I talked about 2017 current expense. Prior to 2017, we were not unlike we are right now. We were in that deficit spending time, and we needed to look to go to a referendum. We did not pass the first time. We came back out to the public again in 2017, and it was successful. So prior to that, we were in this yellow. We were in that deficit spending area. Excuse me. Once you have passage of a referendum, you move into this surplus area. So you are doing well. We need to exercise good fiscal stewardship, which we have done. And then ESSER funding, which I mentioned, that's the federal funding that was available. And again, we believe that helped to extend us out to the point where we are. However, a couple years ago, again, we're analyzing through our finance committee, through the work of Mrs. Smith, through our community budget oversight committee, we start ringing the bell. Deficit spending is beginning to occur. It's going to be time to come to a referendum, typically in the next couple years, and that's where we are now. So that cycle, we're right here, right now, and we will continue to deficit spend until we can have a successful referendum. Then we move back into the surplus phase here, back into the green, and then hopefully through the package that we have for your consideration here on March 20th, will enable us to go several years out into the future before we have to come back. I think it's important to note that I talked about it's at usually that 3 to 5 year mark. I was with another superintendent up in the Newcastle County area. They go to a referendum every 3 years. That's part of their strategic plan. They know every 3 years we're coming back. And to me, I'm a little jealous of that because, you know, then we know, the community knows. However, historically here, we have not done that. We've said we're going to hold off on this process until it's absolutely necessary. And that's where we are now. So that could be a consideration moving forward. Is that something we want to have smaller increments? I'm not sure if the public has an appetite for that. Typically, we've, again, stretched it out as long as we could. All right, per pupil expenditures, you can see we're right around 19,000. You can see where we are. This is just the county data. And then you can see where our tax rate is in comparison to the other county school districts. We have historically always been the lowest, and you can see we're right at the bottom, 3.23, squarely at the bottom. If this referendum is successful, that will pull us up towards the middle here, right around this Laurel-Milford point. However, I can tell you just by listening to some of the other school districts and Mrs. Smith's experience as well, these other school districts are in the same or will be in the same situation. So their rates will have to be adjusted as well. Mrs. Smith, do you want to explain this?
Okay, this slide shows our tax rates. So every year, the board is required to set our tax rates, and they are sent to the county for inclusion on the tax bills that go out in August of every year. Those tax bills, just if you're not aware, they include taxes for Sussex Tech High School as a countywide vocational school, our school district or the resident district that you live in, and the county. So we have to set our specific tax rates. The first is current expense. That's what this referendum is about. And those are dollars for operating. So that can be anything from the local salaries for teachers, substitute costs, utility bills, instructional supplies for the classrooms, curriculum, constables, custodial supplies, transportation. It runs the gamut of anything that we need operationally. And then the debt service rate is the rate that is for our bond payments. So typically, when there is a major capital improvement project like the Sussex Central project from 2020, when we go out to referendum for that, the vote is to authorize us to borrow dollars. So through that, 20-year bonds are issued through the state, and then this rate encompasses our principal and interest payments on those bonds every year. Tuition rate is a rate set by the board every year. That is to fund services and staff and supplies for special needs students or any other need defined by law or approved tuition programs through the state. Typically, we're using that for special education students and pre-K students. There are approved tuition programs, like in our district, we have the Howard T. Ennis School for special needs kids, but we also send kids to schools like the Sussex Consortium at Cape, the Delaware School for the Deaf up in Newcastle County, and those things. So those funds are paying for those students in those programs. And then minor capital improvements, that rate is funds that we receive from the state. We get 60% and are required to match 40% every year. And those funds are used for repairs and maintenance of our buildings and grounds. Those total for this tax year, $3.23.4.
One thing that I want to add that you do not see here is impact fees. So our other counties are able to utilize impact fees from the building that's going on in their area. That has been authorized through the state for the county to consider. It hasn't been approved yet. However, those funds, we all see all the building happening in our area. I mean, you can't ride around without seeing it. That would generate some additional, well, quite a bit of additional revenue for the school district to be able to utilize to offset referendum, to utilize for building projects, et cetera. So that is something that we are hopeful that will the county will again consider. Our board passed a resolution last year that was submitted to the county so they could consider, and it was essentially letting the county know that we were, as a district, are in favor of those impact fees and that they would benefit us. We have drafted an additional resolution that the board will consider at the end of this month at their regular board meeting. Again, that will go to the county. Mrs. Smith has spoken to the county in last year in their session, and again, explaining why impact fees would be very, very helpful to our school district. And really, with that building, it helps to offset our overall expenditures.
All right, we're going to set the referendum aside for a minute and just talk about reassessment, because that's one of the biggest questions that we've gotten throughout this whole process and even before this process, right? Everyone has the question of, what does reassessment look like? What does it mean? What is happening with that? So if you're not aware, the reassessment was born out of a lawsuit against all three counties because the assessments are so old. Sussex County is 1974. Newcastle and Kent are in the 70s and 80s as well. So that precipitated the process that's gone on for the past couple of years, where all of the properties in all three counties are being reassessed. If you have additional questions, there is a website on the county's website that explains reassessment. It has videos and all of that, but we're going to dive into this more here. So one of the questions we get is, why do you need to go to referendum? You're going to get so much more money with reassessment because my property values were $24,000 and now they're $500,000. So you've got to be getting more money when we take that $3.23 rate to it. What is factual about that is it doesn't impact referendum. So by law in Delaware, in a year of reassessment, we cannot collect any additional revenue than we did the prior year. So this year, we're slated to collect about $46 million in current expense operating dollars, which I know sounds like a lot, but we are a large school district. We have approximately 1,700 employees, and our local payroll is hitting $3.5 million each month. So once those monies start getting eaten up very quickly, and then what's left over is for us to pay utility bills and supplies and all of that I mentioned earlier. So what happens in that year of reassessment is you collect the same amount of revenue as the prior year. The harm in that for districts like us is we've been growing about 3% every year. So we're not going to get that growth that we normally would. There is a caveat in law that does say the district can collect up to 10% more in revenues. That's a school board vote in the year of reassessment. And that's meant to make up for appeals and delinquencies and growth. There is a provision on the county side you may have heard of as well for 15%. As of last week, my discussion with the county finance director is that they will not be taking the 15%. They're not going to have budget growth. For us, the school board voted at our last board meeting that should the referendum pass, they will not collect the 10%. Because one of the questions we're getting a lot of is, hey, we may vote to pass this referendum and then you could add 10% on top of that. So the board wanted to assure the public, if the referendum passes, we are not doing the 10%. So what all that means with us being revenue neutral, collecting that same amount of revenue next year, is that we have to adjust the tax rates down. So that $3.23 won't exist anymore. And I'll show you that in a future slide. But what's important to note is that does not mean it's revenue neutral to the individual taxpayers. Or I've even heard, my taxes won't go up more than 10%. The 10% is just for the actual collections for the district. So depending on how your house was valued previously versus how it's valued now, and that change is what will determine whether your taxes go up or down or stay neutral. What's happened over time is as building permits are issued and houses are being built, because they're using those 1974 values, the county has had to calculate those properties back to those 1974 values. So of course, over time, it's gotten wonky. One of the examples I use is if Dr. Owens and I built the exact same house, but I built it 10 years ago and prices were lower, and he built it today and the cost of materials is higher, when you calculate those back, it's going to be different because they're different values. So again, over time, that's gotten wonky, and reassessment is slated to fix that. The next slide here is a calculation. It's just for illustration, but it's pretty accurate with what we have. So for this current year, the tax bills that went out last summer in 2024, we were slated to collect about $46 million. That is based off of about $2 billion of property values in 1974 values. So what that calculates to be is $2.35 per $100 of assessed value. In 2025, this coming summer, with staying revenue neutral, we would still have to collect the $46 million. Again, this is outside of referendum. Right now, it's looking like our assessed values are going to be $40 billion in that 2023 value. So they've gone up about 20 times. In order to stay revenue neutral and still collect that $46 million, we adjust the rate down to 11.52 cents per $100 of assessed value. And you can see the calculation here, it comes out to the same $46 million. Again, revenue neutral to the district, not revenue neutral to the individual taxpayer. With the 1974 values, our average property in the district was about $24,000. So if we look at that in today's values, that's about a $490,000 house now, because those dollars will stay the same, about $564. We also have houses that are $24,000 or were and are now at $780,000. So you can see that's about a $330 increase in taxes. And houses that were $24,000 are now $200,000 and have about a $330 decrease. But you can see the total of that is still $1,692, which means the district is revenue neutral. And I've gotten questions of, hey, how is this accurate? Is this accurate information? And it is. We can see home values with the new values. We were looking at some the other day that were like $560,000 homes, and the previous values range from like $14,000 to $44,000. Again, it's all based on when those houses were built and the dollar value of the time calculated back to the 1974 values. What we've also found is that there were commercial properties that were underassessed previously, so that reduces the burden on the residential taxpayers. But really, wherever the home is, it depends on the values and the changes in that. Another example I give is, you could have had in the 1980s a cottage built in the 1950s, and it was along the water, but it was in the middle of nowhere. No one lived there. No one wanted to be there. There were no restaurants. There were no services. But over time, that area has built up, and now there's developments and there's restaurants and there's services and people want to live there. So the value of that house has gone up a lot because of the surrounding property. What we've also found in our analysis is even after referendum with calculating these rates down, it's looking like about 52% of our properties will still be paying less after referendum than they did last year, or no more than $100. And I know sometimes that's hard to believe because when do taxes go down? But again, they will in this case because it's spreading out those property values equitably and in modern times. Now, the county will, especially because of this lawsuit, go out for reassessment every 5 years going forward. So while this is a new process to all of us, because it hasn't been done since 1974, we're going to experience this every 5 years going forward. So the numbers shouldn't get as wonky as they have in the past. The county on their website has also released a calculator that will give a range of what your estimated taxes will be next year if you put in your new assessed values. It is a range, it is an estimate because there's a lot of moving parts that are still happening with this. By law, the county did not have the new assessed values until February 15th. So this is all new data that we've been analyzing over the past couple of weeks, but there's still a lot of things in motion. So Tyler Technologies is still finishing the informal appeal process that was happening. Now the formal appeal process with the county is happening. So you didn't have to do the informal to do the formal. You could do both. The county has seen instances where someone appealed and their property values went up, so it's not always going down. But there's other things going on, like there was legislation introduced to exempt agricultural property from property values. So while that $40 billion number is pretty close and we don't expect any major changes to it, it's still going to be in flux for a while. What we've also done on our website is piggybacked off of that county range and calculated the new tax rate based on the new assessed values down. So if you go to our website, there's a calculator on the left. I think it's the bottom link. You can put in your new assessed value. It'll bring the range in that you'll see on the county website. It'll calculate the increase for the referendum would have on your property and then a total range of what that looks like. And again, because assessed values are up and down all over the place, what we're encouraging people to do with that is then to take that range, look up your tax bill from last year, your actual taxes for Sussex County, Sussex Tech, and the district, and calculate the difference. And there's links on our website where you can go and you can find your new assessed value if you don't have that paper still that we all received in the mail, or there's a link for you to look at prior year tax bill. And so you can see that difference and how both the reassessment and the referendum affects your individual property. But with all of that being said, as I've mentioned through this, there were properties that were previously underassessed, so they will be having a tax increase, and properties that were overassessed and would get tax relief, but it's distributing that tax burden more equally. The county on their website also has information for tax assistance programs. So there's senior citizens, disabled residents, low-income families, all of that information is on there. If it applies to you or anyone you know, please check it out. Two of the biggest ones that we deal with, one is a disabled veterans tax credit. There's certain criteria that you have to meet, but you can apply for that and have a reduction on your tax bill. There's also a senior property tax credit, and I don't know how well-known this credit is. Currently, the rule is you have to be 65, domiciled in Delaware for at least 10 years, but then you can get up to 50%, up to $500, 50% off your taxes. So if your tax bill is less than $1,000, you won't get the whole $500, but you do get the 50% up to $500. What's good about those two programs is they're state programs, so the district doesn't lose revenue through those. The state actually backfills those dollars to us. But certainly, again, like I said, I don't know how well known these programs are. So if they apply to you or anyone you know, please check them out. All right.
All right, thank you. Moving on. So again, we get this question every time we present what will happen. And I won't read this to you if we are unable to pass this referendum. One point I do want to point out is deficit spending will continue to occur. So again, the process must be addressed through the referendum in order for us to, again, bring ourselves back into that surplus to be able to ensure we're operating efficiently through that part of the referendum, as well as paying our teachers a rate that is consistent with their counterparts throughout the county and consistent with bringing in good quality educators to our school system. Okay, Mrs. Smith touched on some of this, but this is the numbers associated with what we're asking. Operating expenses, you can see the cents there, but that equates to 12.2 million, and our staff recruitment and retention equates to 10.2 for 22 million. And these figures reflect cents, that first column, per $100 of assessed value.
So what makes this referendum unique is that we're going through this reassessment process at the same time, so it adds additional layers. When we started this process, we only had the 1974 values, so we had to calculate that $1.21.05. So we're hearing concerns. You know, not only are people taking the previous $3.23 and applying it to their new assessed values and saying, wow, my taxes are going up $16,000. But they're also taking the $1.21. So now that we have the new information, this is what we're required by law, by the Department of Elections to advertise. But what the referendum is doing is looking to generate 22.5 million. So what that rate actually calculates down to is about 5.7 cents that would still, with those new assessed values, that would still generate the 22.5 million.
And on average, you can see $289 per year to those homeowners, or $24 per month. Okay, so again, March 20th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. These are our polling places. There are 8 of them. Most of these are schools, but we do have Millville Community Center. You do not need to vote at the area in which you live. So if you live here in Dagsboro and you find yourself in Georgetown on the 20th and it's more convenient, you can go to a site there. Wherever you choose to go is, these are your options. And again, inclement weather date is March 27th. Voter eligibility, district residents who are U.S. citizens, 18 years of old or older. Voter registration is not required, but you must show proof of identification for residency within our district. You do not have to own the home, you just have to live here. And again, I talked about those 8 polling places. There is absentee ballots available. You can see mail-in is coming up here soon, so that you have to hit that deadline. And in-person absentee ballot voting is available at the Department of Elections Sussex County office until noon on March 19th. So I believe that is up in the Georgetown area. Okay, so before we jump into questions, I do want to encourage everyone, this presentation is on our website. Please visit our website. Not only is this presentation there, we are updating a frequently asked questions document. So the questions we get that maybe we haven't thought about through our presentation, we're updating there. There are videos that have been created that do, I think, a better job than what we're doing with going through these slides. But those videos are short, 2, 3, 4 minutes, and they go through all various aspects of why we're asking and what we're asking, where to vote, et cetera. So that information, if you have folks that may value looking at the videos, please share our website information with them, go to our socials, and we can be contacted here at this phone number. If you have questions, we can be emailed or contacted here, and we're getting back to folks here within a day or two. So that is the presentation, and we, again, we're watching online for questions. We're going to take those, but if you have questions here this evening, you're first up. If you could just go to the mic so we can hear everyone, and we're happy to answer anything you have. Mr. Mann.
So Dr. Owens, we have a question from the chat. And the question is the tax rate lower because there are more properties?
It's a combination of both. So there's always more properties. Every year we're a growing district. Like I said, we have that 3% growth every year. But for the purposes of this, the tax rate is lower because of the new assessed value. So like I said, the assessed values went up 20 times. So we have to recalculate that rate down.
Again, if you have questions here, please go to the mic. Otherwise, we'll continue to take questions that are coming on and online. Good evening.
My name is Stacy Robinson. I am a school nurse in the Indian River School District. I'm going to get emotional because this matters to me, and it matters to the people that I work with and the people that I work for, which are your kids. When we talk about our referendum and Dr. Owens talks about our staffing, he mentions our teachers and our classrooms, and the people he doesn't mention, but I know who matter to him very much, are the support professionals within our buildings. We already know that we are going to lose staff members as support professionals. These are your school nurses, this is your custodial staff, this is your behavioral interventionists, these are your special education coordinators, these are your food service workers, these are your instructional technology professionals. We are the people who make it possible for teachers to do their jobs and to keep kids well and safe in school. I sit on the professional standards board for the state, and I try to advocate for the best possible conditions for specialists. I work with the National Association of School Nurses as the director for Delaware, looking at how wonderfully we treat our students here in the state of Delaware when it comes to nursing and health services. We went through a global pandemic here, and if it were not for all of the support professionals in your school buildings, there would have been a lot more issues out in our community that would have affected all of you. Dr. Owens also talks about all the kids that go to college. Let's talk about the kids that don't go to college, the kids that live here in your community. They're the kids that are cooking your food in your restaurants. They are the kids that are handling your health records when you go to the doctor's office. They are the kids that are managing at the DMV to make sure that your things are processed correctly. They're educated individuals, and they have graduated from this school district and the school districts around here. We operate on a whole school, whole child, whole community framework. That means that every kid that comes out of this school impacts the life of every person in this district and every person in this community in one way or another. I have a daughter who has an IEP. She was basically identified in school by the support professionals in her building. Why was she going to the nurse 27 times in a school year? That nurse and I talked, and she's like, I don't understand why your kid's coming to see me so frequently. We dug a little deeper. Between the school nurse, the special education coordinator, the school psychologist who ran tests and helped to determine that she had a learning disability, she now has a classroom with instructors and support educators in there that have taken her from nearly failing third grade to being in the honor roll marking period for both marking periods of fifth grade. These are the people that are creating the individuals that will impact your lives. You will be in a hospital someday. You will have to go to a doctor's office. You will eat in a restaurant. You will go to a library. You will need to buy goods and services from the people in our community. And some student that graduated from the Indian River School District is going to be the one that's going to help you. Do you want a student that's been supported and adequately educated and given the best possible opportunity? Or do you want someone who falls through the cracks because we've had to eliminate staff members and there aren't enough people here to make sure that every kid is given the fair and equal opportunity that they deserve?
Mrs. Smith, we have a clarifying for that last question. Is the tax lower because of more properties in comparison to other districts close to us?
I can't
Current
answer
tax rate.
that question because we don't have the data for the other districts, much less their growth versus ours.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, my name is Blair Catlin Brown. I'm a resident of Frankfurt. I'm a school social worker here for Indian River School District. My son is a student in 6th grade at SDSA, and I'm the vice president of the Teachers Union, Indian River Education Association. I'll keep this snappy because Stacy did an amazing job advocating for all of my people, but the majority of our membership does just support this because of everything that Stacy said, expand it to every single position in our buildings. The two things that I'll share, and Dr. Owens has stressed these things, but I don't have to, I get to say it maybe a little bit more vigor. This won't go away. I understand the anger that the community has about any increase in taxes. But if the community does not vote, these costs do not disappear. The district will have to come back again and ask for the same thing. But in that time period, we are losing staff. We are losing athletics. We are losing programming. We are losing the ability to give our students everything. And our students deserve absolutely everything. Because I am a union person and I believe in action and getting out there in the community, I do urge all of you to please look at Sussex County's county council schedule. They meet twice monthly. You can go speak publicly in person or on the phone. I've gone as well and spoken in support of the impact fees and the VSAs. It is hugely important. Your anger, again, at the lack of funding that comes in from developers is very warranted. But unfortunately, the district can't do that. We need everybody in this room plus some to please show up. And again, I'm happy to go with people, whatever you need, but please show up. Your voices can be heard. We just have to come together and be a larger, louder voice. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. I guess my one question is, like, on your first or second slide, it says no matter what happens with the referendum, positions will be cut. Why is the referendum rate not based to keep those positions versus getting rid of staff that is already pretty well taxed?
There is that normal RIF process that occurs every year. So we are just trying to anticipate whether this passes or not, being as lean as we need to be while also providing services. So we're trying to be as fiscally as responsible as we can. Again, we have not moved forward with additional cuts until after we see where this referendum lands. If we can be successful, again, that we hope that impact is very minimal.
It just seems strange that that wouldn't have been voted in to keep the staffing the way it is now versus saying there's automatically going to be staff cuttage.
And some of it's through attrition. So if someone retires or leaves the district and we're looking at, are those duties that can be spread out to other areas or other people that can do some more, or, other areas, maybe there's not as much of a need for this anymore, but we have more of a need over here. So some of it's also through attrition.
Okay.
But again, that's the process that we look at every year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions online? Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. Oh, sorry, a little too close. My name is James Wheatley. I'm the district secondary math specialist, and hi to everyone out there, especially the math teachers who I love very much. There was a question online about why are we throwing a lot of money at this? Can money fix the problem since our test scores are so low? And I think one of the things that our community has really been focused on is some of the results that have come out from some national tests, such as the NAEP, or another one from the Kids Count data book. It kind of puts Delaware at 45th in the nation, and another study kind of puts them at 46th in the nation. It's really important to look at some of those assessments and figure out exactly why. Some of those assessments aren't based on the entire aggregate. What it sometimes looks at is only one specific grade level. Right now in the state of Delaware, as of 2 weeks ago, there were 17 open math positions. That is 2,760 kids that are not receiving a math education from anyone in their classroom other than a teacher that Zooms in, which is just a virtual call, or they're learning from a computer. That's it. So when we look at the state of Delaware and we wonder why are we in this spot for some of these national assessments, well, if the national assessment was only looking at 4th grade reading and 8th grade math, and there's not enough math teachers in the state of Delaware, then we've got a problem. We also have single-digit enrollment in math education programs at the University of Delaware right now. So we don't have any math teachers coming down the pipe. There are at least 12 non-tenured math teachers that are in the department right now, and they are in danger of, being bumped out or moving on, or if they feel uncertain if the referendum doesn't pass, moving on to a more stable area. We cannot afford to lose our math teachers. We cannot afford to lose any of our great teachers. Just to showcase how well Indian River's doing over Delaware, let's just talk about math really quick. Fourth grade is 3% above the average. Fifth grade is 8% above the state average. Sixth grade is 3% above the state average. Seventh grade is 9% above the state average. Eighth grade is 5% above the state average. And our SAT scores are 2% above the state average. So we have some really good momentum here. And I can also talk a little bit about ELA, where ELA, we are launching a brand new curriculum called CKLA. And just lately, we have actually seen that all grades K to 5 are outperforming the national norm for growth from September to February by almost like 10% in every single grade level. So we are making gains, and we really, really hope that we can continue to push for those gains. This is not an easy ask. I understand that for every teacher that really wants to keep their job, there's also homeowners and businesses out there that also really want to make sure that their property taxes stay low, not because they want a lower bill, but maybe because it's a necessity for them. And I think both sides need to understand that, you know, we all want something very, very similar, what's best for both of our families. And so I think we can come together as a community and try to really help each other on this, make sure we know about the tax assistance programs, make sure we know what's at stake in the urgency here for our school district and our community. But just wanted to answer that question about the national averages and how, you know, although Delaware is always touted as 45th or 46th in the nation, we are a part of Delaware, but we are not Delaware. Okay, we are a part of it, and clearly we are a little bit above.
Yes, sir.
How are we doing? Is there any truth to what has been heard that money from the Cape Henlopen School District is being funneled into the upstate Newcastle School District, when, if it's true, could any of that money be funneled over here to the Indian River School District?
I had not heard that, but I will let Mrs. Smith maybe address that.
I have not heard that either, so I'm not sure what the context is or what level of funding it is or what happens. What I can tell you is the way the funding works in Delaware, and it's pretty complex, and there's currently an education funding commission that's looking at change. Each district's state funding comes through our unit count, which is our September 30th student enrollment. We count the students, there's ratios of how many teachers you get per student. A lot of our dollars comes through that. There's also state grants. We also get federal allocations, but then our local tax dollars come through this process. That money is collected by the county and comes straight to us. For our district, the only money that is flowing out from us to other districts are, like I mentioned before, the tuition dollars. So when we're sending students to the Sussex Consortium or the Delaware School for the Deaf, for those special needs, critical components that those kids needs that we can't offer here. The only other thing that happens is through this local revenue collection is if a student chooses to go to a charter school or they choose to school choice to another district, the local funds follow the student. So if we have a student that goes to Cape, our local share goes to them. It's a whole back end process that happens through the state, and it's net because we're sending kids to Cape, Cape's sending kids here, and vice versa. So those are the only, as a finance director, that's the only switching of funds amongst districts and amongst counties that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of anything else like funneling to Newcastle County. Or Kent, for that matter.
The other thing I wanted to say is that, you know, a referendum is always a tough nut to crack. There's no doubt about it. I don't know how many of you here know that I live in Plantation Lakes. We're building 753 new homes on the south side. That doesn't include the original, which is where I live, or the north side. The population of Plantation Lakes, when it is completed, will be just about equal to what the town of Millsboro has today. So when it comes to items like a referendum, I think that you need to address, very much so, Plantation Lakes as a whole, because you have to understand, every household pays an additional $1,000 a year. You can call it a tax, but it's a referendum repayment to the town of Millsboro. So we're already taxed at $1,000 more than if you didn't live in Plantation Lakes. So I do not know, and I'm standing here telling you, I don't know how that money is dealt with. But when you consider the number of homes that are going to be in Plantation Lakes, when it's all said and done, not to mention the new homes that are being built in the new developments around Plantation Lakes. That's just one example. And we all know that we've had an influx of new homes and people coming from out of state. And when they move down here, yes, they're saving a lot of money on taxes. They're saving a lot of money, period. But I would want to think that most of those people that are moving down from the other states and so on, how many of them are bringing children with them? They've come down for more tax breaks. It's a tough nut, and I think it's a good thing to do. We need children to have good teachers. We need teachers that are going to stay. We understand that. But I wish you good luck with this, and I think if there's any other way to address it with people who may not be showing up here, I hate to see so many empty seats, but you've got to get that message out and understand what they're paying also and why it's going to be so difficult. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I did visit Plantation Lakes. I think there was a crowd of about 100. It wasn't the official HOA, but there's another entity there at Plantation Lake. So I was given some time to speak to them and express the same information, not in this detail, but and also took some questions. So I appreciate you sharing that. We do know that Millsboro area is growing. I think our school district's done a nice job of trying to forward plan for that growth. And by that, I mean the building of the new Sussex Central High School. It will be ready in the fall. The vacated high school will now populate the existing Millsboro Middle School. It will go there so we can accommodate many more students. Again, they will be moving in the fall as well. The vacated Millsboro Middle will become also a school. We're looking at several options of what school should be there, what level of students should be served. As we went out back in 2020 for that capital expense, the intention was for it to be an elementary school, and that may be where it lies. But through that process, it enables us to prepare for what could be an influx of students. Again, the variable there that you mentioned is we don't know what type of homeowners are going to be there. Are they homeowners with students or are they retirees? So we want to be prepared, and I think we are. We're positioned for the future in terms of capacity within our various buildings. We will need to be creative with some areas, but that's a good news item that I think can accommodate that, so we wouldn't have to come back out to build a new school hopefully anytime soon. Any additional online? Yes, sir.
I just have one question, really. You had a chart up there that spoke of the tax rate in 1974, and on that same chart it said that your current expenses every year are $46 million. Is that what it said?
So that is based off of the 1974 assessed values, adjusted for today, but still calculated back to those 1974 values. And yes, that current expense operating dollar collection for this year is slated to be $46 million.
So, all right, what was the collection in 1974?
Oh, I have no idea. That was before I was born, sir.
Well, there was drastic number differences, like the taxes in 1974 were up there, and the current taxes are up there. But there was nothing that said what the school's expenses were in 1974 for the district.
Right, and those are the values as they were calculated in 1974. So if you build a house in 2020, that didn't exist in 1974, but it's calculated back to kind of retro.
So what are the expenses right now then? What do you need a year? If it was 46 million in 74, what is it now?
Well, it's $46 million this year.
Okay.
So the additional revenue that we're asking is $22.5 million to keep up with all of those
So
expenses.
what did it cost to run the school district in 1974? That's the question.
I don't have that, but I can try to find it. I don't know if the records go back that far with like the Department of Education.
Well, it would help compare the contrast of what it costs today, what it was then, what the taxes were then, and what the taxes are now,
Right.
or what they're about to be once the reassessment's finished.
Right. What I can speak to, and I don't have numbers memorized off the top of my head, but I analyzed back to the last referendum to 2017, our expenses, and looking at our transportation cost and our unit growth. So the number of teachers that we qualify for and additional state positions that have been given to us, but also have that local cost. We've seen, 100%, 70%, 200% increases in some of those costs with substitutes and utilities and transportation. And that's just in the past 3 years with the post-COVID inflation.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, that's a number that you guys will try and put out, though. I mean, what it cost in 1974 versus what we got to pay today. I think all of us, I was alive in 74, and I remember gasoline at 42 cents a gallon. And it's gone up considerably. To try and help price compare to the public, I think that would help.
Okay, we will stick around. I know some of you may have questions you don't want to ask right now. We will stick around as long as needed. If you have some burning questions, we really do appreciate you coming out and showing the interest in our school district. It's important to us. I hope you are more informed now than when you entered this auditorium here earlier. And again, if you have additional questions, we're available. Our website is a wealth of knowledge, and we really do appreciate you making your voice heard on March 20th. So thank you. Have a good evening.
For our online viewers, we will stay here if there are further questions and continue answering those for you. Thank you.